Hi, everyone, and welcome to the March Assessment and Accountability webinar. This is Kevin Chandler, the Director of Assessment and Accountability. As always, a few housekeeping notes. Everyone joining today is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can send them to us through the Q&A box shown here. Simply type in your question and click send. We have posted our presentation as a document so you can download and follow along. Our presentation is also being recorded, and it will be posted on our website along with a transcript of the presentation. Okay, let's get started. To begin, we know that many districts are partnering with the Idaho Digital Learning Academy, or IDAA, this year to help provide instruction in an online environment. As we enter the spring assessment window, please be aware that IDAA is not a school for accountability purposes, and the home district and base school are responsible for assessing the student, even if instruction in the relevant subject area is provided by IDAA. Let me repeat that. IDAA is not a school for accountability purposes, and the home district and base school are responsible for assessing the student, even if instruction in the relevant subject area is provided by IDAA. And with that update, I'll pause for questions.
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Ayaka for some updates for accountability.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today and hope you all are doing well. First, thank you everyone for participating in the graduation rate survey. We received over 50 responses, of which we hope to complete the review by the end of next month. We'll report back to you. Next public comment period, thank you. Next public comment period is currently open to receive comments on the Consolidated State Plan addendum proposed for the 2021-2022 school identification. Please follow the link posted here to review the proposed changes and make comments. To help you better understand what is in the addendum, here are the brief description of proposed changes. TSI identification criteria. CSI app exit criteria, use of 2021 ISAT IDAA proficiency rate for identification, and 2019-2022 ISAT growth for identification. Your opinions are important to us as we would like to build a plan that is valid and reliable, is transparent, is reflective of reality, and promotes mutual responsibility. We want you to understand how the school identification process works and how you can get support that you need to improve the system together. We hosted a webinar last Thursday to describe the upcoming changes in the Consolidated State Plan. If you didn't have a chance to participate in the webinar, please take a look at the recorded webinar. And lastly, in this section, I'd like to clarify this year's ISAT IDAA participation requirement. Students enrolled on or before April 29th through May 13th, or the last day of school as reported via IC, who are not exempt from testing, are required to participate in ISAT or IDAA. To clarify who is exempt from testing, let's look at the next slide. There are five ways for a student to be exempt from testing, 4 of which are considered automatic exemption, and 1 is a manual exemption. Let's take a look at the automatic exemption. First, as you guessed from the requirement, if a student was not enrolled on or before April 29th through May 13th, or the last day of school, the student is exempt. In other words, if a student exited before April 29th, enrolled after April 29th, or enrolled on or before April 29th, but exited before May 13th, or the last day of school, then student is exempt from testing. If the student's IC enrollment date was out of range, the exemption is automatically applied. In addition, if a student was considered foreign exchange, private, or homeschooled, the student is exempt from testing. If the student was coded correctly via IC, the exemption is automatically applied. Also, if an English learner has been enrolled in a US school for less than a year, the student is exempt from ELA literacy testing. If the student's date of first enrollment in a U.S. school was recorded correctly in ELMS, the exemption is automatically applied. To clarify, English learners who have been enrolled in a U.S. school for less than a year still need to participate in math and science testing. Lastly, if a student meets the special exemption criteria, the student is exempt. I call this a manual exemption because you must manually request this type of exemption during the appeals window posted in the summer. So then what are those special exemption criteria? These exemptions are for those students who were absent for the entire testing window or were homebound due to a documented medical reason, students who faced some extenuating circumstances like death in the family or house fire, and lastly, students with incorrectly reported ISAT enrollment or attendance or ELMS data. You would need to create an appeal in the appeals application during the appeals window to manually exempt these eligible students from testing. More info will be provided about the appeals application and window as we get closer to the actual window in the summer. No dates have been finalized, but the appeals window for ISAT IDAA last year was open in mid-July. So then you wonder, why are we talking about this now? It is because in order for you to submit an appeal in the appeals application, you would need to start collecting evidence now. For homebound appeal, you would want to make sure that your attendance report reflects homebound code for the entire testing window. If it doesn't show the homebound code for the entire testing window, we cannot accept it as evidence. In addition, you should also have an IEP or other home learning plan showing the authorization dates. The dates have to cover the entire testing window. For medical appeal, you would want to make sure that your attendance report reflects medical or excused absence code for the entire testing window. In addition, you should start working with the family to collect the medical doctor's note, including student's condition, reasons that condition prevents the student from testing for the entire testing window, medical doctor's signature, and his or her authorization date. Lastly, once again this year, we keep collecting COVID-19 related appeals for informational purposes only. We'll remove the COVID-19 closure reason as we did not have any appeals submitted last year due to COVID-19 closure. When I say informational purposes only, there's no such thing as COVID-19 exemption. But we would like to collect this information to better understand the challenges that you guys are facing. To clarify, no evidence is required for COVID-19 appeals. Last year, 20 schools from 20 LEAs submitted COVID-19 appeals for informational purposes only. Thank you so much. We learned that for those schools that submitted COVID-19 appeals, 73% and 67% of non-participants for ELA literacy and math, respectively, were due to COVID-19 refusal. We also learned that higher grades had more non-COVID-19 related non-participants. That is, more students in higher grades did not participate due to reasons other than COVID-19. That was the end of my presentation. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so Anita said, if the student is dual enrolled and only takes electives on our campus, we do not need to test the student, correct? Even if they take IDAA courses in ELA math and science, but not on our campuses, we would not need to administer the ISAT, correct?
Hi, Anita. Yeah, I will double check that and make sure we get that answer into the Q&A.
So homeschool students that just attend for electives do not have to take the ISAT?
That's correct. So if a homeschool students are not taking any core courses from you guys, first you should consider identifying these kids as PH school as H in the IC file, and that would apply the automatic exemption. But if you didn't do that, you can manually appeal the child during the appeals window.
Okay, thank you. And are incarcerated students exempt? do they count against our participation rate?
If they are incarcerated in detention centers, I believe detention centers is a testing site and they should participate in ISAT and IDAA.
Thank you. That's all of the questions for now.
Okay, thank you. I will turn it over to Valerie.
Good morning. This is Valerie Steffen, Engagement Survey Coordinator and Accountability and Reporting Coordinator. I'm glad to update you right now on most things engagement survey. By now, all schools should have received an email with links to the student survey roster and instructions about about accessing and updating that roster. Also, districts and assessment coordinators should have received an email with links to the staff and parent surveys, along with relevant information. If your school or district has not received these emails, please contact me. If your school has not received them, but you know you're not supposed to, don't worry about it. There's also good news. We are now 3 weeks into the 6-week engagement survey window, and a little over 1/4 of students have completed the survey. Yesterday, it was 29%. Districts range from 0% to 100% completion rate so far. It's a great start. And now we're hoping for participation to accelerate as you strive to hear from as close to 100% of your students, your staff, and your parents as possible. Please encourage everyone to participate. In the slide above are a couple of useful hot links for accessing information. Here is contact information for the fabulous Cognia help team. We've had very positive reports about their assistance and quick resolutions. I also stand ready to hear calls and reply to emails. Are there questions?
Who is counted as staff?
Basically, anyone who works for the district or the school, and it is pretty much up to the district and school. If your question has to do with volunteers, for example.
Back to the incarcerated question. The student in question is in an actual jail, not a juvenile detention center. Does this change your answer?
If a child is in actual jail, the child should be exited accordingly. And if a child is not enrolled and during the testing window, and we talked about dates in my slides, then those students will not count towards your participation rate.
On the ISAT IDAA participation requirement slide, it states that a student enrolled on or before April 29 is required to participate. So just to clarify, if a student withdraws prior to April 29, they will not be counted in our participation, correct?
That is correct, but if they already take a test prior to April 29th, their score will be counted.
Okay. And what grade levels take the survey? I'm assuming this one's for Valerie.
3 through 12. And then parents and staff in all schools.
On the staff survey, Valerie, there's a demographic question that the person taking the survey can indicate if they are classified or certified. The survey report can be disaggregated by both types?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why the question is there.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Paul for a NAEP update.
Happy March. Let's hope for some really nice weather. It's time for me to get back on my bike. This year, schools have done an amazing job accommodating the national assessment. Over the past couple of weeks, I have been in the field at schools, visiting with school staff and watching students take the test. The students all did a wonderful job, and it is because of their supportive teachers and staff. I know how, throughout Idaho, educators have worked extra long hours and worked extra hard to cover more than their normal roles this year. The addition of NAEP to the spring semester went well because of these efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your hard work. Once March is over, that's it. You probably won't hear from the NAEP field staff until fall of 2023, when we begin preparing for the spring 2024 session. So when do we get results? That will be the question moving forward. This fall will be the earliest, assuming everything goes perfectly. This conversation has begun at the National Center of Education Statistics, but there is no definitive answer yet. A member of our communications team here at the department thought it wise to write down this quote of mine in relation to this fall results conversation and tape it to her wall. Sometimes, in interesting years, things take longer. I will let you know when I have more information. Until then, enjoy that improving weather.
There are currently no questions in the chat.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Andrew for an ELPA update.
Morning, this is Andrew Bennett, and today we will be reviewing some just-in-time information around the English Language Proficiency Assessment. So without further delay, let's get started. All right, first I wanted to take a minute to say thank you to you and all of your district and school staff for assisting in administering Access for ELLs this year. This is by no means an easy task, and I appreciate you all so very, very much. So thank you. This year, over 60,000 Access for ELLs online test sessions were administered. This number does not include the sessions which require the use of paper to record student responses, as is the case with kindergarten access, alternate access, and the writing sections of grades 1 through 3. So great work. So listed here are the important upcoming topics and dates district test coordinators should be aware of going into the early part of April. Test materials must be returned to DRC by March 11th, which is on Friday, and the LEA data validation window is open from March 28th to April 4th, 2022. All secure Access for ELLs test materials must be sent back to DRC by March 11th, 2022. Materials not returned by the deadline will not be processed in time for reporting. Information on how to prepare and return materials is outlined in the 2021-2022 District and School Test Coordinator Manual on pages 25 through 28. In combination with sending materials back to DRC, district test coordinators and/or school coordinators must complete the accountability form within WIDA AMS to record the amount of materials sent back to DRC. If any discrepancies exist, this also must be recorded. See the WIDA AMS user guide, pages 52 through 53 for instructions on how to complete this form. If materials are not returned and not documented in the materials accountability form, the SDE will contact your district to investigate why the materials are not accounted for. District test coordinators may confirm that DRC has received their district secure testing materials by using the Return Materials Receipt Report. And details on how to review this report can be found within the WIDA AMS user guide. The LEA pre-reporting data validation window will open from March 29th to April 4th, 2022. The data validation process is designed to identify student demographic, accommodation, and test result records that could potentially contain errors and provide the opportunity for districts to provide the corrective action before reporting. The WIDA AMS user guide supplement for data validation outlines how to complete the data validation process within WIDA AMS. And upcoming ELPA training webinar topics and links are posted on the ELPA webpage under the trainings tab. So we hope you can join us.
Okay, I'll throw it over to Karen for an IDAA update.
Thank you, Chandler. Again, I'm Karen Striegel. I'm the Special Education Coordinator for Alternate Assessment, Low Incidence Disabilities, and Medicaid. Get ready to be sprayed with the fire hose like always. Are you ready? I've been getting some troubling questions about whether students with disabilities have to participate in statewide assessments. The short answer is yes, absolutely. It is up to the IEP team to determine how a student with disabilities will participate in statewide testing, not if they will participate. There are 3 ways that students with disabilities can participate in assessments. They can take the general assessment without accommodations. They can take the general assessment without accommodations, or they can take the alternate assessment if they have the most significant cognitive disabilities and they qualify. In other words, the IEP team cannot opt a student out, cannot opt a student with a disability out of the statewide assessment. I'm pleased to tell you that all of the alternate assessment quick guides are finished and ready for use. These documents include step-by-step instructions with screenshots and illustrations that walk you through each step. You already knew about the quick guides for the learner characteristics inventory and the student response check. There are also quick guides for the administration scripts for the computer adaptive test, for the printed response option cards, and the paper tests. Of course, there is a quick guide for the early stopping rule. You will find the IDAA quick guides posted on the Idaho Portal Resources page. Type a keyword in the search window. On the Significant Cognitive Disabilities Topics page, for the Idaho Alternate Assessment tab, and on the Special Education and Idaho Alternate Assessment webpage. And you got to scroll down and look under the Training tab. The hyperlinks are included on this slide, including tips for finding them at each location. Yesterday, I held an IDAA test administration question and answer webinar with we had about 30 participants. Some of you and your teachers may have participated. The recording and a subsequent FAQ document will be posted to the Significant Cognitive Disabilities topic page and then to the Special Education and Idaho Alternate Assessment webpage in a few days. Again, the link to those web pages are embedded in this slide. I want to remind everybody of the basics of the early stopping rule, or the ESR. The ESR is intended for students who do not have a consistent observable mode of communication. If the student is non-responsive to the first 4 items on the IDAA because of communication deficits, the teacher marks each item as no response. The ESR quick guide shows you how to do that. After the teacher marks no response on the first 4 items and clicks the next button, they are directed to what I like to call the ESR confirmation item. Once the teacher clicks yes on this item, the red End Test button appears and the teacher can submit the test. But what if the teacher accidentally clicks an answer option for one of the first 4 items instead of marking it as no response and clicks the next button? Even if only one of the first 4 items on the test has an answer option, then the test advances to item 5 and the teacher cannot activate the early stopping rule. Right? Well, don't worry, there is a remedy. First and foremost, the teacher should stop the test. In other words, do not continue going through the test. Do not submit the test. The teacher should immediately contact the test coordinator, which is what I hope they will do anytime they have an issue anyway. There is no need to call the Idaho Help Desk or the State Department of Education. Instead, the test coordinator will submit a test impropriety to have the test reset. After the test is reset, it might take a day or 2, then the teacher can redo the IDAA and activate the ESR as appropriate. Finally, I want to remind you about 3 of the most common issues with the IDAA that are very easy to fix. I covered 2 of these in previous webinars, but I've added a 3rd. Number 1, the learner characteristics inventory does not appear when the teacher logs into the data entry interface with the student's EDIU. The problem is that the alt assessment flag was not checked in TIDE. Easy fix. Log into TIDE, check the alt assessment flag. Remember, the special education flag must also be checked. Number 2, The IDAA test cards don't appear as expected when the qualifying student logs into the secure test browser. This means that the teacher did not complete the learner characteristics inventory in the DEI. That's easy. Go do the LCI. The third one is the IDAA fixed form test cards don't appear as expected when a qualifying student logs into the secure browser. I know that this is not very many students. It still happens. I still get calls. The problem is that the paper tester flag was not checked in Tide. Easy fix, log into Tide, check the paper tester flag. Phew, that was easy. Keep breathing, everybody. You can do this. Back to you, Chandler.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. Kevin Chandler here at the department with a few updates for ISAT. The Spring 22 summative test window is opening soon. For in-person and remote ISAT, ELA, and math summative testing, the window is open from March 14 to May 13. Our testing vendor needed a little bit more time to prepare the in-person and remote ISAT science summatives. That window is open from March 21st to May 13th. Speaking of the summative, the Test Administration Manual, or TAM, and Test Administration Quick Guide are both now available on the Idaho portal. Keep in mind that the Idaho SDE has elected to go with the adjusted blueprints for Spring 22 summative testing in ELA and math. The Spring 22 summative adjusted blueprints for ELA and math are available on the Idaho portal. Just like the Spring 21 blueprints, the Spring 22 adjusted blueprints will yield claim level data at the aggregate or roster, but not at the individual student level. For Spring 22, the science ISATs will be operational field tests. Blueprints for the elementary, middle school, and high school science ISATs are available on the Idaho portal. They show the number of clusters and standalones that will be administered per content area, as well as the potential number of field test clusters and standalones that will be administered. Access the accessibility and accommodations resources on the Idaho portal. These resources are intended for school-level personnel and decision-making teams, particularly Individualized Education Program, or IEP, 504, and English Learning Plan teams, as they prepare for and administer the ISATs. As a reminder, from the February webinar, not all ISAT test accommodations are available to students who take their ISATs remotely. 3 accommodations require in-person testing: print on demand, read aloud, and scribe. Please be proactive and collaborate with your special education colleagues to identify students who use these testing accommodations before a student tries to take a remote ISAT. The Idaho SDE is offering color copies of the parent brochures to provide alongside the ISAT summative individual student reports, or ISRs. These brochures provide guidance on understanding the ISRs, answer a few frequently asked questions, and offer directions on where to find additional resources. The ELA and math parent brochure is applicable to both the ELA and math ISRs. It is available in both English and Spanish. Separate sections in the order jot form will be available to order English and Spanish versions of the ELA and math parent brochure. Orders for the science parent brochure can be placed now, but you will receive the science parent brochure at a later date. The science parent brochure will be available in both English and Spanish. Separate sections in the order jot form will be available to order English and Spanish versions of the science parent brochure. Again, order the science parent brochure now, but receive it at a later date. We have emailed all district test coordinators with a link to the order job form. The job form should be completed by the district test coordinators, who will then disseminate the brochures to the schools. Orders should be placed on or before April 15th. The Idaho State Department of Education is excited to share 2 S&E workshops that will happen this summer in Portland, Oregon. The S&E workshops offer educators the opportunity to collectively contribute to the creation of high-quality instructional resources that will appear in Tools for Teachers. The 2 S&E workshops will take place on July 13 to July 15 and July 18 to July 20, 2022. The July 13 workshop will focus on the creation of ELA resources, and the July 18 workshop will focus on the creation of math resources. Please share the Save the Date survey link and S&E recruitment page with Idaho ELA and math teachers who may be interested in attending. The Idaho SDE is recruiting for our standard setting conference. I did mention several times that we would be holding the meeting in August, but several factors converged that necessitated the meeting being held earlier in the summer. The standard setting conference will be held the week of July 18th, with standards being set for specific assessments during specific dates and times. Please see the slide on the screen now for those specific dates and times. This in-person conference seeks to bring together a large group of educators and stakeholders who will work together to recommend the proficiency standards for the ISAT Science and IDAA, ELA, Math, and Science assessments. The proficiency standards will assign scale score cuts between level 1, 2, 3, and 4 achievement levels. Again, we're planning to conduct this in-person conference in or near Boise. Please note the specific dates for each of the tests and content areas. To also repeat, we need general education and special education expertise on all committees, so please sign up if you're interested and able to be present. The Idaho SDE will also be sending out this recruitment in an upcoming newsletter and email. And with those updates, I will pause for questions for ISAT.
Students whose IEP or 504 are updated during the testing window and are requesting updated supports or accommodations. If they have not taken interims with the requested supports or accommodations, should those supports or accommodations be provided for current test opportunities?
That's a great question. So we would definitely recommend that the student practice using those accommodations before taking their summative. They can do that, of course, by having those accommodations set and tied and then logging in to take a practice or training test.
Thank you. We are a K through 8 school, and during the interim assessments, we had grades 3 through 8 complete each assessment at the same time in the morning. Is this an option for the upcoming window to avoid loss of instructional days, or do we need to test each class individually?
Scheduling is up to the different districts and schools based on the amount of proctors that you have and based on the amount of devices that you have. We would recommend setting up the test sessions so the proctors can give appropriate amount of attention to all the students that are testing.
This year, teachers can proctor their own classrooms, correct?
Yes. For spring 22 summative testing, the Idaho SDE has elected to allow teachers to proctor the ISATs to their own students. The only documentation needs to be submitted is that needs to be noted in the test incident log. In our February webinar and our February newsletter, and specific instructions were given for how to document that in the test incident log.
Back to the incarcerated question. We have a student at a county jail. That is still enrolled. Is our district, still enrolled in our district and receiving online instruction? The jail will only allow 1 hour per day. Will this student be exempt?
Hi, thanks so much for this question. We've got your name noted in the Q&A. We'll reach out after our webinar to discuss the specific situation.
Okay, that's it for questions.
Excellent. We'll throw it over to myself for an IRI update. The required Idaho Reading Indicator spring testing is quickly approaching, and the IRI Braille materials can be ordered. The SDE has sent out an email to district test coordinators and superintendents with the link to the IRI Braille material form. If you have been contacted by your DTC, please reach out to them. They may place orders for those students who need IRI Braille materials. The DTC will place orders in the JOT form. The IRI Braille material order window is open now till March 31st. Packets of IRI Braille materials will be compiled and sent out to the DTCs on April 11th. With that update, I will pause for any IRI questions.
So we have 2 questions. What is the IRI May testing window for schools receiving the governor's grant? Is it May 2nd through 10?
There was no required testing associated with the Governor's Learning Loss Grant. It's just everybody has to test for the Spring 22 IRI. That assessment window is the same for everybody and notated in our assessment window PDF.
Our reading specialist will be approving designated support based on the IRI tier. She wants to give all Tier 3 students to have TTS. They haven't previously used TTS. How is this going to work?
TTS stands for text-to-speech. That accommodation should be only assigned to students that need it, not to every student.
Will there be any financial help to help pay for teachers to attend standard setting conferences?
We are working out those details and provide that in the invitation.
Can teachers test their own students in May, or do they need to change teachers?
Yep. So for IRI, there have been no changes for who can proctor the test to their students. So for IRI, it does have to be someone else other than their teacher.
There are no other questions at this time.
Okay, I'll throw it over to Ayaka with a college entrance exam update.
Hi, everyone. I'm back here again. I sent you guys a separate email about this, but at the February 17th board meeting, college entrance exam graduation requirement was waived for the class of 2022. However, you may locally enforce this requirement. Seniors who have not participated in state-sponsored SAT may still choose to participate in the upcoming spring SAT testing, and the state will cover the cost. On the other hand, spring 2022 SAT is still required for the class of 2023 as of today, unless the student meets the exemption criteria or participates in ACT or ACCUPLACER as outlined in IDAPA 080203-10503. And for the class of 2024 and beyond, it is still being discussed by the legislatures, but we'll let you guys know as soon as next year's requirement and allocation are finalized. Lastly, March college entrance exam newsletter was released earlier this month. Here are some key points from the March newsletter for the month of March. On March 14th, schools will receive a fee waiver code in their K-12 reporting portal. Eligible students receive a variety of benefits with a fee waiver, such as free question and answer service reports, unlimited free score sends to colleges, and more. You'll need to use the alternate eligibility requirements on their website to determine eligibility if your school did not collect the free and reduced lunch applications this year. More information will be sent to the SAT testing coordinator. And now through mid-March, schools will receive or may have already received SAT school day pre-admin materials, including manuals and answer sheets. On March 29th through the 31st, or April 4th through the 6th, depending on your school's spring break schedule, your school will receive secure test materials. Lastly, schools are expected to complete the online training by the end of this month. And here are some key points from the March newsletter for the month of April, as the newsletter includes future deadlines 2 months in advance. Students enrolled at virtual voucher schools may register for the May National SAT Saturday administrations using their voucher codes through April 8th. Your schools will host the primary SAT school day on April 13th and makeup SAT school day on April 26th. All schools must participate in the makeup survey to indicate whether they are or they are not participating in the April 26th makeup SAT school day. If you plan to host the makeup testing but do not submit the survey, your school will not receive testing materials.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending. While we're waiting for any last minute questions, let me go ahead and let you know that our next webinar will be 10 a.m. Mountain on Wednesday, April 13th. You can find links to register for this webinar or to review past webinars on the Assessment Accountability's redesigned homepage under the Connect with Us heading. Any final questions before we wrap up?
There are currently no questions.
Excellent. We will include the questions and answers with the webinar that we post. Watch for the posting that includes a PDF of the PowerPoint and questions and answers later this week. We will need time to make sure the document is accessible. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Oh, just got one question that just came in. Will there be remote ISAT assessment training from the SDE, or should we just use the materials on the portal?
There are several resources for the remote ISAT testing. I'm putting the final touches on a remote ISAT webinar, and we'll have that available later this month.
And that's it for questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone.